"This is disgusting. Are you blind?" Tasha Glen's voice sliced through the quiet hallway like a knife. She stood with her arms crossed, heels planted firmly on the sleek marble floor of Altura Innovations. Her eyes narrowed at Elijah Brooks, the new janitor. Young, black, and silent, Elijah stood beside the spotless glass conference table he had just finished cleaning. The surface gleamed under the white-blue LED lights overhead. You could practically see your reflection in it. "I just cleaned it," Elijah replied, his voice calm, not defensive, just stating the truth. But Tasha wasn't looking for truth. She was looking for a target. With zero hesitation, she picked up a full cup of coffee from a nearby desk and hurled it across the table. The brown liquid exploded on impact, splattering across the glass, dripping slowly to the floor, staining the pristine workspace like a war scene. She stared at Elijah coldly with her lips pursed in arrogant satisfaction. "Now clean it again," she said, her voice sharp and commanding. A few nearby employees turned, caught in the moment but too afraid to speak. Their eyes flicked from the spilled coffee to Tasha's smug face, to Elijah's expressionless stare. But no one stepped in. No one asked questions. Just silence. And right here is where the story truly begins. If you believe no one should be treated like this, no matter their race, their job title, or the clothes they wear, hit that subscribe button now and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. It was just another early morning at Altura Innovations. The high-rise tech giant perched above the city of Chicago like a digital empire in the clouds. Inside, the building buzzed with silent efficiency. Glass walls, chrome elevators, holographic touchscreens. This was where tomorrow was being built. Algorithms, artificial intelligence, and billion-dollar software innovations all orchestrated by the sharpest minds wearing designer suits and confidence like armor. Caffeine-fueled engineers hustled through open spaces with tablets in one hand and iced espresso in the other. Executives in sleek watches whispered behind closed doors about mergers, patents, and power plays. Everything in this tower screamed excellence, but only for the chosen few. And then, outside, the hum of a motorbike cut through the morning calm. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it was different. A young man in a black hoodie, dark jeans, and a weathered backpack climbed off. No valet, no limo, just Elijah Brooks. Eyes sharp, posture steady, and purpose tucked neatly beneath the surface. He looked up at the towering building before him. Today wasn't about tech. It was about truth. As Elijah stepped inside, the contrast was immediate. The glass doors whooshed open, revealing the polished world of Altura Innovations. Receptionists in tailored blazers looked up and froze, their eyes locked on the unfamiliar figure walking across the lobby floor. Hoodie, work boots, no ID badge, definitely not one of them. They whispered quietly to each other, already forming opinions. To them, he was probably maintenance or delivery, just another nobody passing through the world of somebody's. And that's when it hits you. Have you ever walked into a room, and before you even said a word, people had already decided who you were? If you've ever felt that kind of judgment, drop a comment right now. We're telling this story for you, because Elijah, he felt it, but he didn't flinch. He just walked forward, calm, silent, watching. As Elijah approached the inner security gate, a tall man in a slate gray suit intercepted him. Reed Monroe, senior executive, polished, poised, and painfully arrogant, the type who wore his ambition like cologne, strong, unmistakable, and a bit too much. Reed looked Elijah up and down like he was trying to decide whether he was trash or recycling. "Hey," Reed said, smirking. "Deliveries go to the back." Elijah paused. That was it. The first cut. He turned to face him, meeting Reed's smug eyes head-on. "No delivery," Elijah said casually. "I was just wondering if you had any job openings." Reed blinked, genuinely amused. The kind of laugh that only people with too much power and not enough humility know how to give. "You want to work here?" The sarcasm oozed off him. Elijah nodded. "Yes, any position." Behind the receptionist desk, a chuckle slipped. Even the front desk staff were in on the joke. To them, this wasn't a job inquiry, it was entertainment. But Elijah didn't break. He stood his ground. Because what none of them knew was that the man they were mocking was their next CEO. Reed folded his arms, leaning slightly, as if this whole moment were beneath him. "A job, huh?" he said, half laughing. "Well, let's see if we have something appropriate for you." He motioned to the receptionist. She didn't even try to hide her smirk as she tapped a few keys on her keyboard. A beat passed. "There is one opening," she said slowly, glancing at Reed, a spark of cruel amusement in her eyes. "Oh," Reed asked. "What is it?" She smiled. "Janitorial team." A pause. Silent laughter rippled like a current through the space. Employees passing by slowed, glanced, grinned. This moment, to them it was comedy. To Elijah it was confirmation. Reed turned back, full grin on his face. "Well, you said any position, right?" Elijah paused for only a second. Then he nodded. "I'll take it." Reed blinked. "What?" "I'll take it," Elijah said again, louder this time, calm and firm like it was the easiest decision in the world. The smugness on Reed's face cracked, just a little. Around them, employees whispered, "Who is this guy? Why would anyone actually say yes to that?" But Elijah smiled quietly, because while they laughed, they had just handed him front-row access to everything wrong inside Altura Innovations. Would you accept a humiliating job if it meant exposing the truth? Drop a comment if you'd go undercover like Elijah, and smash that like button if you're ready to see where this story goes. The next morning, Elijah showed up in the same hoodie, the same worn boots, only this time with a company-issued mop bucket and a time card. He was invisible now. As the hours passed, Elijah quietly moved through offices and hallways, blending in with the walls. No one noticed him. No one asked his name. They barely acknowledged his existence. And that was exactly what he wanted. Because in silence, he was watching everything. The whispered meetings behind closed doors. The cold looks directed at lower-level staff. The way Reed Monroe walked through the building like a self-crowned king. And Tasha Glen, her eyes sharp, voice louder than it needed to be, made it her mission to remind the janitorial staff that they were beneath everyone else. Elijah mopped floors, emptied trash bins, and wiped down glass with quiet precision. But inside, he was cataloging everything, storing it like data, because soon that data would become justice. By day 3, the patterns were crystal clear. If you were rich, white, and well-dressed, you were treated like royalty. If you were anything else, you were just a tool. Elijah saw employees of color being passed over for recognition, their ideas ignored in meetings. He watched senior staff roll their eyes at the cafeteria workers. He saw Tasha Glen scold a janitor twice her age for not scrubbing the corners of the hallway fast enough. It wasn't always loud. It wasn't always obvious. But it was always there, this unspoken hierarchy. One afternoon, Elijah overheard Reed say, "People like that should be grateful they're even allowed inside a place like this." He didn't say it loudly, but he said it confidently, because in this place they believed no one was watching. It was just after lunch when it happened. Elijah was finishing up a quiet sweep of the executive hallway, the kind of floor where people walked fast and smiled slow, the kind of place where janitors weren't supposed to be seen, only useful. Suddenly, Tasha Glen's heels clicked sharply against the tile as she stormed toward him, fury written all over her face. "You call that clean?" she snapped, pointing at a gleaming windowsill Elijah had just wiped down. Elijah turned, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Yes, ma'am. I just finished it." Tasha scoffed. loud enough for the passing execs to hear. "Oh, so now you're an expert, huh?" she mocked, hands on hips. "You really think just because you put on a pair of gloves and drag a mop around that you're qualified to say what's clean?" The laughter from two nearby employees stung more than the words. But Elijah didn't blink. He didn't defend himself. He just stared at her, calm, collected, dangerous, and that only made her angrier. "Are you stupid?" she hissed, voice raised. "I said do it again. Maybe this time try using your brain." A silence fell over the corridor. People glanced over, eyes wide, but no one spoke up. No one stopped her. This wasn't just disrespect. This was power abused. But Tasha didn't know. She was speaking to the future owner of everything she thought she controlled. That same evening, Reed Monroe walked into the executive lounge with his usual swagger. Blazer crisp, smile smug, ego unchecked. Elijah was already there, scrubbing the marble floors on his knees. Reed stopped, smirked. Well, look at you," he said, stepping forward, deliberately kicking over a trash bin Elijah had just emptied. "Missed a spot." Elijah paused, straightened up, stared at the scattered debris on the floor. "Is there a problem, sir?" he asked. Reed leaned closer. "The problem is you don't belong here. But I guess every empire needs someone to clean the dirt off its floors, right?" And with that, he sipped his coffee and walked away, purposefully spilling a few drops behind him. Deliberate, calculated, cruel. Elijah watched the coffee stains spread, slow and dark like ink bleeding across paper. He reached for the rag and wiped it clean without a word. But inside a storm was building, because every insult, every chuckle, every act of casual cruelty was fuel. And soon, Elijah would set the whole system on fire. By the end of the week, something felt off. But not to Elijah. To a few others. There was a quiet shift in the atmosphere, subtle but undeniable. Some employees, especially the junior analysts and overlooked assistants, started watching Elijah more closely. Not with disdain, but with curiosity. There was something in the way he carried himself. Too confident to be desperate. Too observant to be average. Too calm in the face of humiliation. He wasn't just mopping floors, he was measuring people, reading their reactions, noting what they said when they thought no one was listening. One intern even whispered to a colleague, "Who is that guy? He doesn't act like a janitor." They laughed it off, but the seed had been planted. Elijah could feel the shift too. The false sense of power that Reed and Tasha clung to so tightly was starting to feel slippery, because even though no one knew his name yet, they were beginning to feel his presence. It was Friday morning when everything snapped. Elijah had just finished detailing the executive conference room. The table was spotless. The windows glimmered. The entire space looked showroom perfect. But that didn't matter to Tasha Glen. She stormed in, lips pursed, eyes already rolling. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice rising. Elijah looked up from his cart, puzzled. "It's clean." She gave a dry laugh, dripping with sarcasm. "Clean? This? Are you blind?" Then it happened. She grabbed a full cup of coffee from the break counter, and with a flick of her wrist, hurled it across the freshly cleaned table. The splash echoed through the air. Hot liquid sprayed across the surface, running down the legs of the table, forming a puddle on the pristine tile. Employees nearby froze. Conversations stopped. Time slowed. And Tasha? She crossed her arms like a schoolyard bully waiting for a fight. "Now," she said coldly, "clean." Again. The entire hallway went silent. Elijah inhaled deeply. Then slowly he smiled. Not out of submission, but because this exact moment was the final puzzle piece. They had crossed every line. And now the real show was about to begin. If this moment made your blood boil, you're not alone. Drop a comment if you've ever had to stay calm in the face of total disrespect. Subscribe, because what's coming next will flip this entire company upside down. The following Monday, Altura Innovations buzzed with nervous energy. It wasn't the caffeine this time, it was something bigger. Word had gotten out. The founder's firstborn son, someone no one had ever seen, was arriving today. Not for a tour, not for a visit, but to take control. Elijah had heard the murmurs all morning while wiping down glass doors and emptying trash bins. Did you hear? They say he's already in the building. Some secret heir no one knew about. Reed Monroe, already dressed in a power suit 2 shades too bright, adjusted his cufflinks and smirked at his reflection. To him, this was the moment. His chance to impress whoever this mystery heir was. Shake the right hand, say the right words, maybe even get bumped up to VP. Meanwhile, Tasha Glen was busy realigning the janitorial crew, like she was prepping for a royal inspection. Elbows off tables, keep out of sight. And for God's sake, someone polished the elevators again. They were preparing for a king. What they didn't know, he was already in the building. Mop, gloves, janitor uniform and all. And the next time the elevator dinged, it wouldn't be business as usual. Ding. The entire executive floor went silent. Not quiet, silent. The silver elevator doors slid open like curtains on a stage. Out stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man in a charcoal gray suit. His presence wasn't loud, it didn't have to be. It was commanding, like walking power. Flanked by assistants, a legal advisor, and Altura Innovation's senior board members, he moved with intent and certainty, the kind you don't question. And trailing a step behind him, Robert Gaines, right-hand man to the late Thomas Altura. Trusted, respected, feared. His expression was unreadable, eyes scanning the room. Every executive straightened up. Every assistant smoothed their blouse or fixed their posture. Reed stepped forward, already rehearsing the perfect smile. Tasha fixed her hair, heart fluttering like this was her big break. Then the suited man stepped to the center of the room and spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began. Pause. His voice was smooth, authoritative, confident. Today marks a new chapter for Altura Innovations. One that honors legacy, demands integrity, and embraces transformation. He turned slowly, making eye contact with the room. And now, I'm proud to introduce the firstborn son of Thomas Altura, your new CEO. A beat, a hush. People glanced around, searching, confused. Reed's smile flickered. Tasha leaned forward, waiting. And then, the words dropped like a bomb. "Elijah, come forward." For a moment, time stopped. Heads turned. I scanned the room. Elijah, the janitor? Reed's confident smile twisted into confusion. Tasha's breath caught in her throat. Some employees blinked, certain they misheard. But then, from the edge of the crowd, he stepped forward. Still wearing his janitor's uniform. Still holding his work gloves in one hand. Still as calm as ever. Elijah Brooks. Every pair of eyes followed him like gravity. The man they ignored. The one they mocked. The ghost in the background. Now walking toward the center like he owned it. Because he did. Reed's smirk vanished. Tasha's jaw slowly unhinged. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Wait, what? Him? Is this real?" Elijah stood beside the suited man at the front of the room. Robert Gaines gave a single, proud nod, confirming everything without a word. Elijah looked out across the shocked crowd. The same crowd that had stepped over him, talked down to him, or worse, never even looked at him at all. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "My name is Elijah Brooks," he said calmly. "I am the son of Thomas Altura, and as of today, I am your new CEO." A stunned silence spread like fog across the room. No one moved. No one breathed. Reed Monroe looked like he'd seen a ghost. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Tasha Glen took a shaky step back, her hands trembling against the fabric of her blouse. Everything they'd done, every insult, every humiliation, every time they treated Elijah like dirt, was now flashing in their minds like a siren. Because the man they had treated like a nobody now held their future in his hands. Elijah scanned the room slowly, letting the moment breathe, letting the silence speak louder than words. Then he stepped forward again, this time not as the janitor, but as the boss. "You all had an opportunity," Elijah said, his voice low, steady. To show character, to show integrity, to treat every person in this building with dignity, no matter their job title. And some of you, he paused, locking eyes with Reed, failed miserably. A single drop of sweat rolled down Reed's temple. Tasha looked ready to faint. Elijah let the weight of his words settle in, because this wasn't about revenge. This was about reckoning. And now, the reckoning had arrived. Elijah took a deep breath, scanning the room once more. The air was thick, electric, filled with both shock and nervous energy. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Instead, he calmly turned to Robert Gaines, the trusted right-hand man to his late father. Elijah's eyes locked with his, and Robert nodded, giving Elijah the final authority to make the calls. The moment had come. Elijah spoke with deliberate calmness, his words like steel. Reed Monroe. Reed froze. His face was pale now, his smirk gone, replaced by a quiet, desperate dread. The same man who had mocked Elijah, belittled him, and thrown him aside like trash now stood, frozen in place, awaiting his fate. You are terminated from your position here at Altura Innovations, Elijah announced, his voice carrying through the room like a verdict. Reed's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked around, searching for a lifeline, but none came. You can pack up your things, Elijah continued, and leave immediately. The room was silent. Everyone was watching. No one moved. No one dared to blink. Reed's shoulders sagged, and with a few stiff steps, he turned and left the room, defeated. But Elijah wasn't finished. He wasn't here just to punish those who deserved it. He was here to rebalance the scales, to reward those who showed character in a place that valued arrogance over respect. He turned to the crowd, eyes sweeping over them. Tasha Glen. Tasha stiffened. Her face was pale. She tried to hide it, but the tremble in her hands betrayed her. You've been in charge of this building for too long, Elijah said, and your leadership has been anything but fair. Tasha's eyes widened, her heart racing. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. You're fired. She couldn't argue. She couldn't defend herself. Just like Reed, she was escorted out. The room was still, but Elijah didn't focus on Tasha anymore. Instead, he turned to the rest of the staff. There's someone who stood by me, who showed me what real respect looks like in this building. He paused, letting the anticipation grow. A few people looked confused. Others exchanged quick glances. Elena. He looked over at a quiet young assistant who had kept her head down but always treated everyone with dignity. You're being promoted. Effective immediately. The room was taken aback, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Elena stepped forward, her face filled with shock and gratitude. Elijah extended his hand, offering a chance at a new beginning, one of fairness, respect, and true leadership. The room was still. The weight of what had just happened settled heavily over everyone present. They had witnessed the fall of two executives who thought they were untouchable. They had seen a janitor rise and take the reins of an empire. But this wasn't about Elijah getting revenge. This was about building something better, something more. He stepped forward, his posture strong, his gaze unwavering. Respect, he began, his voice calm yet carrying through the entire room. Respect is not something that should be reserved for a select few. It's not something dictated by race, by your position, or by how much money you have in your bank account. He let the words hang in the air. You don't earn respect because of your clothes or the power you think you wield. You earn it by how you treat the people around you, by the way you see everyone, from the janitor to the CEO. A few employees shifted uncomfortably, their heads dipping in acknowledgement. Because without respect, we become exactly what I've seen in this building. Elijah continued, his voice gaining strength. Arrogance, superiority, disrespect. He locked eyes with everyone in the room. I've walked these halls. I've been ignored. I've been mocked. And I've been humiliated. But I learned something through all of it. He paused, letting the silence stretch out. Everyone was hanging on to his every word. The people who tear others down, they do it because they are afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of equality, afraid of a world where power is not determined by privilege, but by integrity. Today, Elijah continued, his eyes scanning the room, today is about more than firing a few people. It's about changing the culture of this company. It's about building something better, more inclusive, more respectful, and more honest. And that starts right now. He turned to his father, Robert Gaines, who had stood back and watched the entire process unfold with pride in his eyes. Elijah nodded to him, a silent acknowledgement of his support. Effective immediately, Elijah continued, Altura Innovations will be implementing new policies to ensure that discrimination has no place here. There will be accountability, and there will be consequences for anyone who thinks they can break that standard. The room was filled with stunned silence. But it wasn't the uncomfortable silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of something new. From now on, this company will be built on respect, on fairness, and on the belief that we all rise when we lift each other up. With those words, the room shifted. The old guard of arrogance and elitism was over. A new era had begun. Elijah stood tall, unshaken, untouched. He wasn't just the CEO. He was the future. This is only the beginning. If you believe change is possible, and that real power comes from respect, not arrogance, subscribe for more stories like this. Because today, the world got a little bit better.